This is from Thomas Clay Jr. Trump is in big trouble. Why? I'm glad you asked. Trump is up into his eyeballs in debt. We do not know all the banks he owes money to, but we do know that Deutsche Bank is one of them. We also know that he's reported $900 million in debt from his financial disclosure forms in 2016. Why would a billionaire need a loan from a bank? Well, to hear Trump explain it, it's some manner of complicated business and tax plan that mere mortals can't understand, because you need a stable genius to understand, along with a certain expertise that most people would call potato logic, because you have to have taters when a brain should be to understand it. The reason why even all of you neighboring Ninians should be enjoying your tall glasses of glee is because banks have certain fiduciary responsibilities to their shareholders, and that means if they do business in the United States, they have to follow certain things state and federal prosecutors call laws. This is where things get good. So you have a company named Deutsche Bank, and you loan a company called the Trump Organization $900 million. The general idea is that the Trump Organization will pay the loan back. But to get the loan, the Trump Organization has to put up what's called collateral, just in case something happens. The bank gets his money back. But imagine for a minute you're at the Deutsche Bank and you know that the Trump Organization has maybe filed bankruptcy 6 times previously. And you tell the president of the organization, the Trump Organization I mean, that he's going to have to sign a rider to get that loan, which will not be used for the collateral of the Trump Organization, but his own personal assets that he cannot declare bankruptcy on. And Donnie Dumbfucksticks agrees to this specific term. Now imagine, if you will, only a few years later that the Trump Organization gets indicted as a criminal organization that will have his assets seized if convicted in a court. If you're at the bank, for instance, that holds a fiduciary duty to your shareholders, and you made a loan of $900 million to that Trump Organization, do you want the state to seize those assets? Or do you want to get a hold of those assets before the state confiscates them? And what do you get those assets before the state takes them and splits them amongst the creditors? You file foreclosures. That means that whether the value of those loans come due immediately. Now, I don't mean to be telling tales out of school, but if Donnie's 3 wives needed $900 million in loans, it's probably because he ain't got $900 million in cash to pay off the foreclosure, and that technically means that Donnie be fucked all the way up. In an extra silver lining, now he has to worry about Alan Weinberger turning in state's evidence. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Since Weinberg, has what we can assume is basic intelligence, we can surmise that the wealthy man, like him, will hire a competent attorney. This competent attorney is not going to allow Mr. Weissman to provide evidence to the New York State that can be turned around and used to prosecute him in federal proceedings. That means to avoid going to prison for the rest of his natural life, Mr. Weinberg is going to have to deal from the federal government as well as the U.S. attorney and do not give deals like that unless they get them with a big fish to fry. And guess who that is? I know many of you have reason to be cynical or even pessimistic about seeing Lady Justice visiting the Trumps, or at the very least, the properties he's put up for collateral to get those loans are going to come due, and as soon at that. Unless he has the cash to pay them off, they are going to become property of the bank. But take to the logic that next inevitable step. Let's say that Trump has the cash to pay off the loans. He will never pay them off because they are subject to be seized by the state of New York. What's going to be interesting is when they seeing them foreclose on the properties and how many of them he has mortgaged, which is apparently Trump Tower is mortgaged to the hilt. That's his pride and joy right there. And I, for one, can't wait to see him try to free himself. And from the Gorgon knot, the New York and the federal government are about to place around his neck. It's about to be a beautiful time to when this Lady Justice lay her heavy hands on the Trump family. CTP, know the truth. God bless. Peace to the left. Justice to the right.